Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays with RPI Consultants. Today we're here with Miles McIver, and we're going to be reviewing our APIA automation project at Nuvance Health. To introduce myself, my name is Julia Robinson. I am a Senior Project Manager with RPI. I've been a project manager for about 10 years, and I've been here with RPI for about the last 2 years or so. One fun fact about me is I am a master of karaoke.
I was asking around the office earlier, and that is under debate currently. So I haven't seen it myself, but
there are some videos floating around. My agent is removing those.
Okay, good.
But it's a true statement.
Okay, that's a word for it there. My name is Miles McIver. I'm the manager of accounting systems at Nuvance Health System. I come from a professional consulting background, doing implementations kind of like this actually. Roughly 10 years in the accounting and finance space, implementations and ERP. And the fact about me is I referee rugby, and I've actually refereed some international stuff. So
very cool.
I think it's interesting.
It's very interesting.
So other people might not.
Very interesting. All right, so a couple things we're going to cover today. We're going to review Nuvance Health as a company itself. We're going to review our challenges that we presented at the beginning of this project, what our solution for the AP solution was, and then also review some outcomes, some metrics, and what our results from the project was, and some results from Nuvance itself.
Great. So this is about my company, Nuvance Health. We are actually two health systems merged into one, Western Connecticut Health Network and HealthQuest, and that, so Western Connecticut, by virtue of its name, Western Connecticut, and then HealthQuest is in the Hudson Valley, just over the border in New York State. Currently, we're about 2,600 doctors, 12,000 employees there. We have Infor as our ERP. We have it for HR, supply chain, payroll, and we have Cerner as our EMR. So this is a bit of a background into our major technologies we have. We use Perceptive for all our imaging, as our imaging repository for all our digital images. Specifically, our Accounts Payable department, we currently employ 8 staff, and we process 190,000 invoices annually across the network. So pretty high volume for us. Yeah, it always shocks me when I see that number, but there's a lot of, you got to give it to the AP team. They work hard. So this all started with actually we needed to assess where we're coming together as an organization, and we needed to kind of see where we're at, right? So we had RPI come in and do an assessment, and everything on the screen here, they went through all of our subsystems and basically did a procure to pay assessment start to finish. So everything from the beginning, purchasing materials, all the way through to payment, and that was very eye-opening for us. We're a hospital, right? So we don't do this often, right? We don't go through our systems. But specifically, one of the major things that came out of that was the AP department and the fact that we were manually processing everything. You know, it's something we've been doing since the beginning of computers, typing it in. You know. Which seems obvious, right? But we just didn't know how far behind we really were, and the fact that there was imaging options out there. So,
Miles before.
Yeah, this is me before. This was a year ago. I've aged terribly since then. But so yeah, so when we look at, so we said to RPI, okay, we've got this problem, we've got this AP problem here, this manual process. What can we do to digitize this and get us into the the future, I guess. This is actually me wearing the same shirt before we did the implementation, and as you can see, I mean, this is just one of our cubes with archive invoice images. What we'd do is we'd get images in the mail, we would key them, put them in a box, right? I'm sure people watching are very familiar with this. And then not in the picture is we've got filing cabinets as far as the eye can see with our current fiscal year. And then so if we quickly need to look something up. So that's what we're dealing with. And it just seems crazy now that we're automated, but that's what we were doing a year ago. It was taking roughly 30, 45 days for an invoice to come in and get processed. We had our stacks, like AP department have all their invoices, excuse me. And we had no visibility into how long they were sitting there or where things were in the workflow. anyone who's worked in AP, you know, the black hole, people call up, where's my invoice? Where is it in the process? And
you did the best you could.
Yeah, sometimes we didn't know, you know, you can look at a filing cabinet, you can look in the stack, but obviously a huge problem when you're talking about paying bills and, you know, keeping things current. Any approvals or escalations for invoices were all done over email. Again, we get tons of email a day. People missed emails, didn't read them, and just a lot of things lost like that. So there's a lot of churn related to that also. And we had the old AP alpha sort by processor. So certain AP processors had their letters that they processed. It gets the job done eventually, just very inefficient. So this is kind of like the high level view of what came out of that assessment and what we were dealing with. And obviously these metrics, 45 days to pay an invoice, where most terms are 30 days at the longest, that's a big issue.
Yep. So whenever we review the challenge, so we knew that we wanted to automate the AP and invoice processing. Some of the things that Nuvance was kind of looking into was cost savings, being able to reallocate their resources to do other things besides just manually keying in those invoices. And then also the transparency that we kind of hit on just a little bit ago. Where are the invoices? What are their status? You know, what do we want? We want everything. And so how do we match up the technology to what the solution needed to be? So that's where, you know, between the assessment and the design, everything, we were moving forward.
Right, and you know, it's us as a client was concerned. We didn't really know what we wanted. We just wanted a digital kind of end-to-end process. So here's the objectives actually on the screen here. This is kind of what we had as our requirement. So we vetted different vendors. RPI is one of them, obviously, that we ended up going with. These were our main things we wanted. So we wanted digital, right? Didn't want paper anymore. We want to get rid of the paper. We wanted digital images coming in via email that would be ingested into the system. If someone emailed something, paper mailed something in, we'd scan it in the same way, it would ingest the same way. We wanted consistency in documentation across all AP departments. So we didn't want each AP processor doing their own thing, keying a certain way. We wanted consistency across.
Also, that brings up a good point with onboarding. You know, if you have a consistent process across for all processors, you bring somebody new on, it's a much less time frame to get them up to speed and actually processing those invoices in those time periods you have set.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll talk about it later, but about the documentation that you say, we use that for onboarding now. It's very helpful. Already talked about the reduction of paper. You know, we try to eliminate it completely, but we still have people mailing in invoices, which is fine, but we tell them, hey, if you email in now, we can process it a lot quicker. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. These were our business objectives beforehand. We're very excited to get to the end product here. We wanted straight through processing. So if something was a PO invoice, it's pre-approved. Everyone signed off on it. PO invoice comes in, let's get it straight through and paid. Errors and delays, obviously the manual process was very error prone. Even identifying those errors is difficult. We wanted a system where we could see where invoices were at every step of the way, and if there were errors, be able to triage them quickly. With any AP process or implementation, you want to go in with a clean vendor master. So one of our objectives was to have whichever consulting company we worked with come in and cleanse that vendor master before we got started. Right. So that's basically it. There's 6 things up there, straightforward, but I think anyone, you know, looking at one of these projects, seeing these, it would be very close to what we had here. Right. Yeah, this is kind of it. Again, just touching on our Infor version, we're version 10 in the cloud. That's our existing technology, what we implemented on. There's our accounts payable department. We're 8 processors and a mail clerk that sorts the mail. And the idea was we could implement automation and have our AP staff do more value-added things. Here's a list of there's a couple of things we have them doing now. We can research things a lot quicker. We can do our reconciliation and kind of cleanliness activities a lot quicker. So that was kind of our mindset. You know, if we can improve this process and add efficiencies moving forward, we can repurpose. So no one's losing a job, anything crazy like that. You know, you have to tell that. But you know, we didn't want to. We just wanted to improve efficiencies, and we were really able to do that, which we'll talk about shortly here. So these were the requirements, what we wanted. This is just recapping what I just spoke about. We wanted imaging, we wanted OCR. So we wanted to be able to scan in. We didn't want a person reading that invoice and validating. We just wanted it to go through OCR to read that. Advanced data capture. Well, that means basically extracting the information off that invoice and being able to intelligently assign it, pull the invoice number, pull the date, look for duplicates, things like that. An approval workflow, the email it's just so antiquated and just doesn't really work. We wanted something within the solution to be able to send out, send back, route around approvals to managers, directors, so-and-so based on approval thresholds, things like that. Reporting, everyone wants reporting, give me more reporting.
There's never enough reporting.
There really isn't. And I mean, you know, we joke about it. We have the canned Infor reports for AP, which gives you a certain kind of point in time, but nothing advanced. I wanted to know, like, how many are we processing? How days aged are we? What's our payables coming up? Like, how much do we have outstanding, you know? So that was one of our big requirements. Training documentation, huge. We touched on it already. And the vendor master cleanup, absolute necessity for a project like this.
Perfect. So we went through a RFP process with Nuvance, and we proposed a solution. We're going to review in these next couple slides coming up the technical solution that came from the assessment that we did with Nuvance. Kofax TotalAgility for the invoice capture and data extraction, data validation, which was a big part of this. And then also Infor's APIA solution to actually process and get those invoices sent out for approvals.
Yeah, and I just got a note here. Here's the RPI plug coming up right now. But when we did the RFP process, a lot of pushback I got from my senior management all the way up to the CIO is we have a tendency to hire these huge companies, and they come in and do what they do. And there was an apprehension with a smaller company, relatively speaking, RPI, 100, 150 people to go with that. But the level of comfort I had with it, smaller shop, but the consultants were extremely knowledgeable, you know, in the business, you know, the experience, and we just talked about yours and the consultants we had on this project, very knowledgeable, and you get that kind of, you feel like a real customer, you know, not just a number. So that worked out really well, and I can't wait to kind of, yeah. You know, it's nice to be right on those things.
Got it. Yeah. All right, perfect. All right, so a high-level overview of a very simplistic solution here. So we have the Kofax KTA solution, which invoice capture. So it's grabbing that invoice, it's extracting the data. The users are validating that extracted data against the invoice image. Yoga Connect, which is a proprietary software that RPI developed, it transfers that data over to APIA, where that invoice is then processed and sent for payment. So it's, you know, Kofax over to APIA, every step of the way you're able to view that invoice and see how long it's taken in each queue or each person's hands.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's kind of like a live lookup. So if you're in Kofax here and you need to pull information like a PO, for example, you type in the PO number on the invoice, it'll populate all that information directly from Infor. Right. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Very cool. So our Kofax TotalAgility part of the project by our spectacular Brian Ayers and Richard Sardana, our KTA professionals here. So emailed and scanned documents, we were able to capture those. We have an AP invoices at the NuvanceHealth.com. People can bring those in or send those in that way. We were also able to OCR paper statements via scanning. So, you know, the scanner process didn't necessarily go away, or I mean, we built on the scanner process to be able to process those things so they weren't manually entering them. OCRing that email of PO, non-PO invoices, statements, and credit memos. The data extraction was by document type. So every type of, you know, PO, non-PO statements, credits, they all have different data part of them. So dates, names, you know, vendor numbers, line items, all that stuff was able to be extracted off of the different document types.
Yeah, and the Kofax solution actually is able to identify which it is by the data on the form, which is
pretty
really
smart.
neat. Yeah, very cool.
Pretty smart. So additionally, the data validation against Infor. So as Miles was just talking about, it's a live look-in. So to your backend system, you can type it right in, and you're able to say, oh yes, this, you know, I want to go look up this PO. Well, you have all that data in real time.
Yeah.
Automated approver routing. So we talked a little bit about the alpha previous approver routing, but they really wanted to get to a point where anybody can work anything. And we want to, that's how we get some of our lengths of time down, you know, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But also buyer queues and vendor maintenance queues. So setting up special queues for those people before it was, you know, held through email. and now it's all within the same system.
Yeah, anyone from an AP department watching this will know we've got a buy message, right? We've got not enough money on the PO. You know, the PO's closed, you send an email, like just craziness. So BioQ enables us to flag it, send it to the buyer, it goes back to a BioQ, the buyer can work that invoice and send it back to AP. So again, we eliminate the email component.
So on our APIA solution, which was implemented by Sean Labonte and Jeremy Stoltzfus, something really cool that we did as a part of this project was we customized the HR structure that was built on the Infor GHR. It was routing and maintaining VAT tables for users. So I'll kind of let Miles, he gets really excited about this. So,
really excited.
Yeah, go ahead, explain it.
Let's get more exciting than this,
yeah,
folks.
more exciting. All right.
So basically, APIA Infor has its own out-of-the-box solution. It's a table, right? So you put in the person's name, their manager. You maintain this table. I said previously we have 12,000 employees. I'm not maintaining that table. So how do we do that? This is a big part of the project actually. So what we did is we think, well, HR do this. Why not we have them use their structure, which they maintain, and use that for our approval routing? So what it does, it goes back, looks at GHR, looks at the person's manager or director if it's over a certain threshold, and it does it automatically. We don't have to update a table. It updates it, the entire table on a nightly basis, pulls in any changes, personnel changes, and we don't have to maintain it. So that was really cool. And this, like you said, this is a custom solution. This wasn't something that out of the box, like RPI actually built this for us. So
yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, definitely able to customize the solution to whatever the client's needs are. So that was a really big one for us, especially for this project.
Yep.
Processing of invoices, credit memos, and utilities via the APIA system. We did build some exception processes for manual resolution. One that I can think of off the top of my head is the duplicate queue. If a vendor kept emailing the same invoice over and over and over again, the system was smart enough to pick up and say, hey, this is already either in a queue working or it's already been resolved. And so there was these exception queues that we put in place for them.
Yeah, just a note on that. We found after implementing is actually about 20% of our invoices are duplicates, which is, I showed you the numbers earlier, 190,000. You can imagine 20% of that being duplicates. Someone will email something in, they'll mail it in, they don't get paid that week, they'll email it again. This takes care of all that, so we're not getting these duplicates stacking up. So that duplicate kind of identification thing is a huge time saver.
Perfect. Also the interface with the Infor ERP. This is the payment posting part of it. So it's live look-in. So we directly interface with that. And we can, it's agnostic. So whatever your backend system, in this case, we had the Infor side of it, but we have that live look-in on the payment posting. And then additionally manager notifications. Before there really wasn't any of that. And now if Miles gets sent an invoice, he has to approve it. He says, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And he doesn't. He's going to get a notification that says, hey, man, you need to go take care of this.
Exactly. And it's really as simple if you're a manager and you're getting these approvals, there's a link in there, you click it, you can see the invoice image, you can put in your coding, what account you want it to hit, and that's it. It gets sent for payment.
Yeah.
It's just from what we had and what to this is, yeah, it's really cool, and just it really modernizes the system.
Yeah.
Big time.
So I want to talk a little bit about our project plan and implementation. So we signed the statement of work and the agreement with Nuvance in March of 2019, and they had a fiscal year deadline to go live with this project by 1 October. It's a pretty big implementation overall, a lot of moving parts that went in there. So October deadline, that wall could never move. So, anything that happened, of course, our project was perfect and we had no issues whatsoever.
Yeah,
so
100%.
100%. But one of the things, we had a condensed implementation timeline because we spent so much time in design to make sure that, we were getting it right the first time. That's RPI, we always say, hey, we're going to do it right the first time. But in this case, it did happen in this case, but we had to spend a lot more time in design and a lot less time in implementation. So condensed implementation timeline, 1 star, do not recommend. We got it done and everything was fine, but it was quite stressful for both teams.
Julie and I had a lot of honest conversations during that time. No, because it was a hard deadline, and it's stressful, when we put that in place, like things change. Our fiscal year end was on that date, and but we
had to hit it.
Yeah, and we did.
And we did. That was It was perfect. It was on the button.
Yeah, we got it on the money.
On the button. Some of the professional services that we had in scope, process analysis and solution design, this is where we spent a really big bulk of our time in the beginning. We had all those subject matter experts in the room. We made sure that the processes that we were putting in place were best practice. We wanted to make sure that the people in there weren't just reproducing manual processes before by utilizing a new system. Just because it's fresh and shiny, we really needed to implement best practice there, and we did. Obviously, our software implementation, custom development, we did create some custom aspects of this project. We had multiple training cycles. This is something that at the beginning of a project, because training seems to far away, we really need those multiple training cycles, multiple testing cycles. And not only did we do on-site training a couple of times, but we also did some guided UATs, so user acceptance testing, where we did training and then they did hands-on, which you can show them all day, but until they get their hands on it and actually use it, they're really not getting that training they need.
Yeah, that was actually one of our requirements. We didn't want online, we didn't want, we wanted a butt in the seat teaching us the stuff, and that's what we got, and that was part of our testing. So as we were training everyone, they were learning the system. So it was a good bang for the buck with that.
It was.
Highly recommend.
We also came on site for go live. I think this helps a lot with the anxieties of a go live, having that technical resource there that's kind of been leading the project. Physically there, whenever you flip that switch and you're in your production system and they're doing it, they're going to have questions, they're going to have anxieties, they're going to, hey, is it supposed to do this? And so even though they've been in training for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, it all of a sudden now it's real. So having that person there was really important.
Yes, I had high anxiety, and Brian Ayers was my best friend for a couple of weeks there, the implementation lead there. So thank God for him.
Another thing that we took into consideration, and it was a part of the scope, is just that post go live stabilization. Just because you go live with a solution doesn't mean that immediately everything's just going to be rainbows, right? So there was about 6 months of post go live stabilization, and now that the system is doing good, small tweaks, small changes, retraining of employees, just as they need to be reminded as to what they're doing and then what they're processing. So that was a big part of our maintaining that relationship with them, maintaining the platform and the product.
Yeah, just the post-go-live stabilization, we actually have, obviously we got to support these software systems moving forward, and we actually have RPI doing our support. So if I have a Kofax issue now, I have a support plan through RPI, I give you guys a call, and so the point is that relationship doesn't just stop at the end there and RPI
just drop the mic and
drop the mic.
We hang on to that mic for a while.
You guys are still on the hook, so you can't get rid of me that easy. So yeah, that's the kind of, you get that support ongoing. So that's makes you feel good, rather than just,
So as far as software and implementation and project lifecycle goes, there was a little bit about hardware considerations, and I know that falls more on you as the client. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. We decided to go. We could have gone in the cloud, but RPI said we prefer to do an on-premise solution, just a little bit easier to troubleshoot. I think the cloud part of it, hosting part of it, was in its infancy a year ago. I don't know where it is now, which is fine. So there is, just when you think about budgeting, you think about doing these projects, there is a hardware component. You've got the scanners for the mail. You're still going to have to scan those things in. Servers, test boxes, and also the production boxes. And then you got workstations for the scanners, so like a PC or something like that. So we were talking about, I'd say the hardware was probably about 20% of the overall budget was hardware stuff, which I didn't think about. I think professional services, I need so many hours, I need these deliverables, and I was like, yikes, I got to buy all this stuff.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind. Anyway, I just thought I would mention it there.
Perfect. Want to go into, of course, everybody probably joined for. So what did this project actually do for you? What are your outcomes? What are your metrics? How did you measure? So this is miles after. Yep, totally stress-free.
Yeah, feel like $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million, very dewy face. This is, AP process.
I mean, that alone, money can't buy that.
I mean, you can't buy happiness. Can't buy happiness. So Miles, tell us about your outcomes.
Sure. So we've got some numbers up here. I'll go through them. So invoice processing. This is not more time than numbers, but so as I mentioned in the beginning, we didn't have perfect visibility into this. Our estimate was about 30 to 45 days. So this is currently, as of presenting this webinar today, on the 4th of March.
Yeah, 4th of March.
Yeah, 4th of March. This is where we're at. So 5 days. So our goal with this whole project was get our processing time under 15 days. We're currently at 5. So I mean that
you're overshooting. It's doing.
We're just going to run the scheduled scan later. Yeah. So 5 days, and that was quite shocking to me. Now I just want to preface this with it took us 6 months to get here, 6 months of stabilization. So for month 1, 2, 3, the numbers didn't look like this. There was some stabilization, there was some teething, there was some issues we worked through. But 6 months later, we were at 2 days for PO. So if I went in the system this morning, I looked at our oldest PO in the system, and that's from 2 days ago. So just really the results kind of still kind of blow us away. Like, right. Yeah, we're at 15 days and we're like knocking out of the park. So we're very lucky. We did the implementation right, I think, and that's why we're looking at numbers like this. Visibility, again, one of our key things we wanted. We have full visibility now. I get a phone call, AP gets a phone call asking the status of an invoice. I can look up in seconds rather than minutes, or I'll get back to you tomorrow. We can see exactly where it is. So that is great. So it's all automated now. So everything gets scanned in and OCR, optical thank you, character recognition.
There you go.
I don't even know why I tried to say
We're both going to get there.
Just in case someone doesn't know what OCR is, it's a machine reading the invoice. It's all automated now, so nothing's manual. Right. So that's a practice we put in, say no more manual keying. If you get an invoice that's a rush, scan it in, validate it, and it goes out the door. So that way we get that digital image of it. Our physical mail. So what we're trying to train vendors to do now is they send us a mail invoice. We call them and say, hey, we've got this new system. If you email that to us, we can process it and pay it a lot quicker. Right. So as a result of that, about 40% of our invoices were mail. We're down to about 20% 6 months later. And we hope to get that down 10, in a perfect world, 0, right? We want everything emailed in. Early pay discounts we weren't taking advantage of. We have visibility now. We can take advantage of that. If we get net 10 discounts, we can look and see those vendors. And with these days like this, we're taking full advantage of those discounts, which when you're talking about 200,000 invoices a year it can be millions of dollars. Right. In discounts.
Cost savings we were talking about earlier.
Yes, cost savings.
Even bringing it back up.
so pay for the project. Isn't that amazing? It's kind of the point,
in one
right?
year, paid for the project.
Amazing. Yes, but seriously, that's it. We didn't know this before. We didn't know if we were getting discount. We just didn't have visibility. And now we can repurpose the AP staff. So rather than have everyone keying all day, we have them doing other kind of value-added jobs within the department, accounting department too.
Yep. So project lessons learned, and not necessarily lessons learned, because like we said, our project went perfect and we didn't have any issues at all. But some things that we do want to communicate out to our
that is a tongue-in-cheek joke. Yeah.
Almost there. So some things that need to be on both sides of it. So radical transparency. I like this word, radical. So the ability to understand the needs of the client and the client's needs of our needs from the client as well. So this is a two-way. We have things that we need, they have things that they need. Over communication. Miles mentioned it earlier. I think we talked every day.
We did.
And we'd still kind of be like, oh, we didn't think about this, or oh, hey, this person's on vacation, or oh, my tester, my lead tester is going to be gone for the first week of UAT, or these are not specific examples, but just in general, like over communicate. No surprises. If he communicated many times, things that were going well, things that he didn't, think were going very well. We can make those small tweaks instead of it plummeting out, and all of a sudden we have this big issue at the end. But we were able to make small tweaks throughout the project.
Yeah, Julia was my project manager on this. So she's standing here, and she was very good. I had a lot of honest conversations with you. Things I could call you up anytime, and that's sometimes you don't get that. Sometimes you get a project manager to kind of get on the defensive. It wasn't like that. It felt very much like a team effort the whole time. And yeah, we spoke every day, but sometimes we needed more than that. And but in the end, we came out with a product that was really good, and I think it was because of that.
Another thing, and the manage expectations part of this. So they had a very specific situation where we had to be in a go live situation by October 1st. There was no moving that date.
Yeah.
So managing those expectations on, okay, here's what we have for a timeline, here's what we have for our design, here's what our solution entails. we got to hit this October 1st go live. What are the most important things that we know we have to have by that October 1st timeframe? So, we manage those expectations by, either from the RPI side, bringing in more resources from our side to make sure we hit that date, or, we tick the box on a couple of smaller issues, or not issues, but things that we're like, we don't necessarily need this one thing on go live. The week after is fine, or 2 weeks after is fine. So we did triage those things as we knew that date's not changing.
Yeah.
So, we had to kind of.
Yeah, we're flexible, and it worked. We really, just like you explained, and I think the ability to be agile like that, it got us across the finish line on time. If we weren't that agile, I'm not sure we could have done it.
Right.
So.
Right. The assignment of a change manager. So if we could give you any bit of advice on an implementation that's literally changing the way people do their daily job, like it changed everything for these AP processors, assign that change manager. If you're lucky enough to have one inside of your company, bring them in on day one, have them understand what this means. Not only did this project touch AP, but I mean, it really does touch other departments, and it affects the way that people do their business. So that person's able to come in and help them through anxieties. If they have a question, they can usually provide that answer to say, oh, you might have a different outlook, so let's show you more training. Oh, you're feeling anxiety about your job. Here, we'll train you a little bit more, and they can judge that a little bit better than the people who have their heads down in the project. It's like, come up for air. Those change managers can really identify those things.
Yep, and this would be a no-brainer for me on another project. I was the PM on the client side, so I had to do this. I was tasked with this, but it kind of took me away from the project. I wanted to be on the project doing the implementation, and I'm kind of sending out email blasts to the organization. So time could have been better spent. And for what it would have been for a change manager, I definitely would have got that on board.
Yep.
And will do.
Yep.
Yes. Forward.
Another thing that we did in this project that was really beneficial, especially since we had this hard go live this hard date for go live, we knew that we had a list of things. They were all part of our scope. We knew we were going to get through all of those, but maybe not by the time go live happened. So we prioritized everything, and we had, a go, no go stakeholder buy-in. And what it did is it listed every single thing that we had that said, hey, this is a go. I feel comfortable with the way this has been developed and tested, and everybody feels good here. And there were a couple of things that came out of it that said, I'm not really 100% on here, but I feel comfortable with go live with this. And so what it did is it made those stakeholders on that project think about it and say, am I okay with this or am I not? Well, we got their buy-in, and we were able to go
very
live.
Important. Yeah. So I've had these on projects before where you have the go live call, but to have all the stakeholder involved is kind of key here. So we have the VP of Finance, the CIO, the VP of IT, so everyone has to be comfortable, right? And and they can come back to me and say,
hey, wait, why isn't this? And you're like, hey, you signed right here that said you were okay with 2 weeks,
so,
or whatever the
very important call. What can we live with and what can we not live with post go live? And we hammer that out on that call. It's a couple of hours, time well spent.
Great. And then just post go live support. Never underestimate the amount of additional training or just helping that happens after go live. We don't just go live and say have a great day. We'll see you later. There's a lot of communication that has to happen during that time frame.
Yep, and even to this day, I'm in weekly contact with RPI. Like I mentioned, they're our support moving forward. We have a plan with them, and it's a very good relationship. Feels very personal. We get turnaround very quickly with requests and things. So that works very well for us.
A little banter, a little joke telling. We have a pretty good time.
Got to keep it lighthearted. I mean, this stuff is super exciting, but there's other stuff that we can talk about.
All right, well, I hope you guys have enjoyed our presentation so far. Don't leave yet. We are going to be taking questions. Just provide those in the chat window if you do have any, and our moderator here will list those out to us. Do you want to go through a little bit of summary of what we talked about today? So I'll let Miles take it away on the Nuvance side.
Yeah, sure. So I've already mentioned all this, but just touch on it again. We're a growing health network that merged with other hospitals, other networks. We had this issue with paper processing, which, when you grow, there's more paper, there's more mess, there's more noise, and we needed a scalable product that could handle this. And just to mention, now that we have merged, getting the other side onto our automation, it's fully scalable. So there's really no work to be done just with apart from training. So that's been great. So we keep that in mind when we're doing, keep that scalability in mind if you do these implementations, because things are changing all the time. Anyone who works in a hospital knows this. We went with, Kofax for our OCR and intelligent capture, and then Infor APIA. Since we're already with Infor, it made sense to stick with the product there. And this is the key here.
That's the big one.
Yeah, I mean, going into this project, this is what I was asking everyone, like, what is the days to pay, And this is what I'm at. I'm 5 days now, average across all invoices, which is it's mind blowing really from where we were, over a month.
Great. So you might be asking yourself, how do I get started with API automation? So we do a lot of assessments, the same thing that the Infor team went out and did for Nuvance that kind of blossomed out of this. We do accounts payable assessments all the time. We evaluate and measure your current invoice efficiency. We take an inventory of your current technology, try to capitalize on that unused potential. Also, we are constantly trying to show you what that ROI can be whenever you do that process improvement. Additionally, the request for proposal. If you guys have a request for proposal out already, invite us into that to evaluate us against other vendors and solutions for API automation. Or you can just contact us. So on our website, rpic.com, you can contact and we will route you to the appropriate account executive, and we will customize based on your ERP and your environment, we will customize the demo for you.
Cool.
So products and service capabilities, obviously Infor Lawson, the Cloud Suite product, everybody probably knows all about them, but full service Infor professional services and consulting. Highland, it says ERP agnostic, so you can use with any ECM, so Highland products, on-base, perceptive content, and brainware. Also Kofax, additionally, Kofax is ERP agnostic, so for their content and process automation services. So whatever you have in the back end, we'll be able to take care of it.
Kofax. I'm obviously a huge fan of Kofax, so yeah. So give me some Kofax.
Kofax capture, transformation, total agility, robotics process automation, and ReadSoft Online. So a little bit about RPI consultants. We have 100+ full-time consultants, PMs, architects, developers, functional consultants, technical consultants. If you need it, we have it. We are based out of Baltimore, Maryland, additional offices in Tampa and the beautiful Kansas City, Missouri, where we are presenting from today.
We are.
And technical and professional services. So anything from the strategy, architecture, installations, upgrades, maintenance, staff augmentation, rehaul and redesign, implementation, obviously project and change management.
Well.
Do we have any questions? All right, well, thanks everybody for joining today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice day, thanks.